I was babysitting and I had the radio on and we knew there was a lot of trouble. And he said, and Australia is now at war. I thought, wow. I got so excited. I thought it was wonderful. Grabbed the baby and I ran all the way up to our house, burst in through the front door and stopped. And there was Dad and Mum. Dad's standing there and Mum's got his arms around Mum and Mum's crying into his shoulder, and he kept saying, it's all right, Meg, it's okay. The war will be over by Christmas. Pat and Jim won't have to go. And my two brothers, and I thought, Pat and Jim at the war? No. All the excitement, there was nothing, it just drained away, and I thought, no, I don't want that. And the war didn't finish. Went on, and Pat went away, and then Jim went away, and I became an ambulance driver, and that's how we saw the war out. And it wasn't pretty. I don't ever want to see another one. I heard about the AWAS, the Australian Women's Army Service, and I thought, I'd like to join up, I'd like to go too. I wanted anti-aircraft, I wanted to shoot Japanese planes out of the sky. And I thought, how am I going to join up? Mum won't let me go. Dad always thinks I was delicate because of the way I was born. And so my cousin was the same age as me, and she said, they've got a women's army going. And I said, yes. She said, nice to be in that. And I said, I'd like to go too. She said, how about we go down to Newcastle, catch the train? I've got enough money for both of us. We'll catch the train to Newcastle. We'll join up and then we'll tell Mum and Dad later. I thought, good idea. We went down to Newcastle. First thing he said was, how old are you? 21. Because we knew we had to have the permission. And he said, I see. And where are your baptismal or your birth certificates? Oh. And he said, strange how birth certificates all got burnt at one stage. A lot of them were burnt in fire. So we thought he was giving us an out here. So we said, well, that's what happened to ours. Oh, righto. So he signed us up. After the SIGs came in, I thought we'd go back and finish our rookie course. No, we need staff. So you two, you can be cooks. They were two that joined up for changing, they were dressmakers, and they were going to work in the Q store, altering uniforms and that sort of thing. No, they were cooks. You two, can you drive? Well, yeah, did have a licence. All right, you can be drivers. The rest of you, well, let's see, 1, 2, 3, we need 4 mess stewards. You 4 can be the mess stewards. This is how we started off. We were just railroaded into it. So I worked in the mess for a fortnight. I hated it. God, I hated it. And they had a new CO came in, and every now and again he'd come into the mess and he'd look at me, and then he'd stand at the door and he'd be staring at me, and I thought, what's wrong with him? So eventually he came in one day and he said, look, I'm sorry. He was a new colonel. He said, I'm sorry. He said, I'm upsetting you a bit, I can see that. He said, my daughter, he said, she was killed. She was 18. She was killed a fortnight ago. He said, you're a living image of her. And he said, do you like what you do? And I said, no, I hate it. He said, what do you want to do? And I said, I wanted anti-aircraft. Oh, I can't do that. He said, how would you like to be a driver? I said, I can't drive. I hadn't even sat in a car. He said, I can fix that, send you to a driving school. They'll teach you how to drive. He said, I'll fix that for you. We marched out of the unit. He called us in and he said, I've never forgotten his words, I'm 95 now and I can still remember, you are the cream of Australian womanhood. You are the future mothers of Australia. Your health cannot be jeopardised by the roads in New Guinea. And he wouldn't let us go. And so I was put into a pool of drivers. First job, I hadn't been in the army. By that time, I'd only been in the army 3 months. His first job, the male driver of a male unit, they were where they did repairs to fences and huts and things like that. He'd broken his legs ice skating and they needed a temporary driver till they found another male driver, so they sent me out. They'd never had a female driver. And in between jobs, they used to play cards, play poker or anything else. And I didn't know what to do, so I just disappeared into the furthest corner of the hut, got a book and just lay there. And then they got a bit excited. They were playing poker. And they got a little bit excited, and one fella slammed his cards down. I heard him say, 3 Johnnies. And then the other fella threw his cards down. He said, 6 tets. And then all of a sudden, there's dead silence. They suddenly realised that I was sitting in the room. I didn't know what to do, so I just let out a gentle snore to let them know I was sound asleep and didn't hear them. That was the first thing. And then the next thing, they got out on a job. And I said, how long are you going to be? He said, 2 hours. I said, what do I do? Oh, do what you like. And I said, what? I thought, well, I'll just park in a nice shady spot and I'll have a little snooze. So I had my cap on. I just pulled it down over my eyes and stuck my boots out the window. And I heard steps coming along, and then somebody tapped me on the boot. Excuse me, driver, where's the shit house? So I pushed me. I said, I beg your pardon? Oh, Christ, he said, a Sheila. And he took off. At the railway, we met 2 sailors who were waiting to go to Sydney. And as you do, 18-year-old, we got talking. And they said, we've got to wait at this dirty old railway station for 2 hours. And I said, well, what was it? There's a beach not far from where the railway station was in Newcastle, only 5 minutes up the road. And I'd never seen the ocean in my life, brought up in a country town. So I said, why don't we walk up to the beach, and just better than standing here at the railway. So the 4 of us walked up to the beach, standing on the beach, and I could hear this thud, thud, funny noise. And I was looking at the ocean, I think, God, all that water. And I could see a light, and every now and again it'd flash. I thought, it can't be a lighthouse, it's the middle of the ocean. So I said, sailors were talking to Dorry, and they were all laughing, and I said, excuse me, have a look out there, what's that light that keeps coming on every now and again? And he looked, and then all he suddenly yelled out, Christ, they're shelling the coast. It was the mother sub that dropped those 2 subs in Sydney Harbour. This was the mother submarine. They were getting their range, I think, and there was a thud. There were dud shells on the beach. They took out the shop front behind where we were standing, and I'm standing there thinking, God, I've only been in the army half an hour and they're bloody well shooting at me already. Anyway, we couldn't get home that night. The lights were still on. There were no sirens. We weren't ready. And the sailors raised the alarm, and then the sirens went, the lights went out. We had to get the police to notify Mum and Dad. That was awful. And we had to stay in Newcastle that night. Well, we had lots of stews, and we didn't get things like steak or roast or anything like that. We got sausages and we got stew, and we had more sausages and we had more stew. I think that's all we had. Mashed potatoes. Yeah, we had. I can remember, see, my mother never referred to lollies. They weren't lollies, they were sweets. And we never called them anything else but sweets. And at Christmas, we always got our little bag of sweeties, as Mum called it. And when I first joined the army, the girls were saying, they came in, I was the last one in the mess. And she came in and she said, are you finished, Pat? Are you coming out now? I said, oh, yeah, I suppose so. And she said, have you had your sweets? I said, oh, you get sweets too. Great. So I'm waiting for my lollies for sweets. We'd had banana and custard. Oh, that's right, we did get banana and custard. But I was waiting for my lollies. I felt so stupid. But apart from that, I think the worst time I had in the army was when the POWs were coming back. And we got the first lot of stretcher cases out, and they all looked the same. Their eyes were sunken in, their faces were... And they had new uniforms. My brother, Jim, was just under 5 stone when he came back, and he was 6 foot tall. He looked like a scarecrow with a new uniform on him. It just hung on him, because no matter how small they were, it still wouldn't fit them. They had nothing. They had no flesh. They had bones. Anyway, the stretcher cases came on and I took off, and we went to 2 hospitals in Sydney. And you'd get about a mile down the road and there'd be a whole heap of people all standing across the road. You're going to the hospital. Do you come from the AWAS? I said, yeah. Could we find out if there's anybody that knows so-and-so? So I opened the back of the ambulance and they were yelling out, do you know this one, this one? They were calling out names after names, and everybody was trying to get their call first. And the poor people in the back of the ambulance, they could hardly, you know, they were just lying there. They were like skeletons. And then they threw in flowers and cigarettes and chocolates. That happened 3 times before I even got to the hospital. By the time I got there, I was crying so much I could hardly drive. We carried everything off. There was a lot of TB patients, you know, very badly off with TB. We used to take the end of the stretcher, help them out, and then go back in the ambulance and go and pick the next one up. There was no such thing as booties and masks and what have you. But it was terrible. I drove over to the post office, and the post office was in a little shop, and there was all these fruit in the window, and everybody was excited, and they all took the war's over, the war's finished. And there was a woman staring at the fruit, and I went over to her and I said, did you hear that? I said, the war is over, it's finished. And she just turned around and she said, my 2 sons were killed in Tobruk. It'll never be over for me. And I thought, oh dear. I felt terrible then. But then they had, when I got back to camp, oh God, the whole camp was up. But we danced and sang right through the night, daylight. It was great. And then I had to go out to Ingleburn because Jim was one of the walking ones, even though he was skin and bones. He went out to Ingleburn, and all the thousands of people at Ingleburn, everywhere you went, there were about 5 people all trying to get their arms around one soldier, you know, mothers and fathers and uncles and children, and they were all crying. And I'd gone through enough carting these people back and forwards to the hospitals. By the time I got up to see Jim, I'm crying my eyes out. I would have walked straight past Jim. I wouldn't even have known him. Even poor Sonny, our baby Sonny, he was trying to talk to Jim and he kept pulling Jim's sleeve saying, Jim, Jim. And Jim turned around, he got really angry and he said, piss off, mate, family only. Sonny said, Jim, I'm Sonny. Jim said, you can't be Sonny. Sonny's only that high. Sonny had shot up. You know. Sonny, he was very upset when the war ended because he wasn't old enough to go like his brothers. You know, he wanted to be like Pat and Jim and go into the army and go to war. But he was too young when the war ended, but Korea started and Sonny was old enough then, so he joined the AIF and he went to Korea. And we never knew what happened until we got the citation. What happened with Sonny, as I said, it's just over there. And Mum was terribly upset about Sonny. Recurring nightmares all the time. Mum had almost the same nightmare. One was where she was in a jungle and she was running from tree to tree looking behind it, hoping that she'd find Sonny. Oh, we didn't hear any more. They're still looking, you know.